Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for this community and student accommodation presentation. We hope that you're enjoying the conference so far, and we're really sorry that we can't be there in person in Switzerland. We are the Property Marketing Strategists. As marketing consultants, we believe to be able to communicate with the audience successfully, you need to understand what the customer is thinking and how they are behaving. So whilst we aren't researchers, gathering insight is a key part of what makes us strategic marketeers. I'm Sarah, one of the co-founders.
And I'm Deenie, also a co-founder.
And we're going to be talking through today what students want from their community within student accommodation. But you don't want to hear it all from us, so let's hear what the students have to say.
Community means sharing the same beliefs, same values, and also feeling a sense of support and belonging.
Community means comfortable. You know what you're doing, you know the people around you, you know that if you ever need someone, you can turn to someone near you. You're surrounded by people who will support you.
Community is mainly about feeling safe, feeling like you can be yourself around a group of people in everyday life.
Feeling comfortable somewhere or feeling like I fit in a group of people or in a place.
Community is a sense of belonging, and it's also a reflection of who I am and what kind of people I surround myself with, what I believe in, but also what I want to be a part of.
Any group of people, no matter how many it is, that just come together based on something that brings them together, whether it's living in the same place or being on the same course or living in the same city or anything like that, something that they can always relate to each other on.
Community is the people that you share the same floorboards with, accommodation wise, and then with the class, everyone that you have a similar interest with.
So it's always great for us to bring the student voice to these conferences, so we're really pleased to be able to share that with you and what students think about community. So for those of you who don't know what we do, we are marketing consultants, but we also do an awful lot of research into students and the customer voice, and we run a youth forum programme with our partners Dig-In and the Crowd Agency, whereby we do regular pulse surveys on key things that matter to students. So for community, we surveyed about 200 students, largely studying in the UK. 80% of our respondents were UK domestic and 20% were international students. We had a mix of undergraduates, so years 1, 2 and 3, postgraduates and masters. So one of the questions we asked was how important is feeling part of community to you? The sector always talks about a sense of belonging, but we don't really connect that with what community means and how residents connect with that and at what level they do. What came across very strongly for us is that community is like-minded and shares values. Just because you live with someone doesn't make it a community. There needs to be that sense of connection. It shouldn't be forced and it needs to feel natural. Our focus group talked a lot about chosen and unchosen communities. On the whole, they felt that PBSA or university accommodation, especially in their first year, isn't a chosen community. They're just placed into that community and expect to make it work. We also asked the question around catered halls and eating at the same time as others would help with that sense of community. 49% said yes, but when we later discussed that in this focus group, many agreed that whilst on paper it looked like a great way to build a community and to go down and eat together, when they actually considered what having a fully catered package was, they kind of said, oh no, that's not really something that I want. It wasn't desirable, it wasn't attractive. The action of learning how to cook or coming together at the end of the day to cook was something that really brought a sense of connection, and they felt that it was something that they should be learning to do at that age in their life. It was a big milestone. The other thing is, why do we talk about rooms rather than flats? And this is another way that kind of builds that sense of community with the people that live within a cluster flat. And maybe this perceived lack of community in accommodation is actually self-perpetuating.
We can't really talk about community without talking about the opposite, and that really is about loneliness. Loneliness and mental health is becoming an increasing problem in our society, and in particular in younger generations. When we asked students at any point whilst at school or university, have you felt feelings of loneliness? Only 7% said that they do not experience multiple feelings of loneliness, which is a shocking statistic, really, especially when we're talking about people who are living on the whole with other people. We did ask about students whether they would share a room to negate loneliness. And while 77% said yes, we followed this up in our focus group, and they kind of felt that they needed somewhere private, they needed somewhere where they can get solitude. It is very cost related though, which arguably could also reduce other anxieties about paying high rent, alleviating a different concern. We felt that the sharing a room could offer a more affordable alternative. So whilst it might not be for the purpose of negating loneliness, if that room share could be curated in the right way, with the right amount of consideration and technology into matching people, it could potentially solve a feeling of loneliness. But the layout has to be right as well. Students do have to be able to get that piece of privacy that they're looking for. Later in our video, listen out for Noshi, Clara and Jonathan's views on this.
So another key question we asked is, who do you consider to be in your community? This graph shows what people said in order of importance, and I think it was really surprising for us to find that sports teams, friends came out top. I don't think it was something that we were expecting, and this was so much higher than accommodation or uni friends. In marketing, we look to make people feel that student accommodation is their home and home is associated with family, yet we're not seeing that as their sense of community or belonging is coming out. Again, later on in our focus group, you'll see a video where one of our participants discussed the lack of choice in first year when looking at accommodation. Again, we come back to this, it's a community is one that you choose to be in, and for first years, they're not being led that way. They're being put in a community and they've got to make it work. And in many markets, PBSA is competing with shared houses and flats, accommodations that are largely about moving in with friends. And again, I don't think we've quite got the messaging right in PBSA about that moving in with friends. Equally, we know in co-living there's a lot more tools out there to support matchmaking and building like-minded people to live together. And we don't really see this being used in student accommodation, and wonder whether that's a way to help aid this sense of smaller communities within communities. Sports teams are big parts of cultures in many countries and many areas, and they're a really good way to connect people from various backgrounds and bring people back down to a level. And 62% of our participants did say that having a sports team within their accommodation would create more community if encouraged in PBSA. So we think there is some work that we can do there. Because we don't really see any investment in building sport teams within student accommodation.
We ask students, do you prefer to make your own social arrangements or organise them yourselves? This sort of pertains to kind of the managed, curated sort of events programme that we see a lot in student accommodation. What is consistent in all of our research is that students aren't one mass who want the same thing. Yet all too often we design products and services with this in mind. So as you can see, 46% said they like to organise things themselves, whereas 38% said they like to have things organised for them. And 16% said they don't really want any events such as this. As marketeers, we're constantly asking for more segmentation of the market in both the delivery of the product and the marketing. We have a long way to go. And as you can see, with sort of almost 50% liking to organise things themselves and 40% having things organised for them, there's no right way. We do need a flexible and hybrid approach that enables people to engage in their community in the way that they want. In previous research, we have discovered that the events most wanted from this student market is film nights. But other than that, it was very much on educational and self-development activities such as CV writing, TED Talks, how-to guides, cooking, cleaning, etc. In the UK, we do see a lot of pizza nights and hot chocolate nights. So, is the industry spending too much time on the wrong types of activities and too much focus on appealing to the masses? There's nothing wrong with appealing to smaller cohorts with a segmented approach, so that the people that attend those events are finding those like-minded people that have got something that they can really connect with. We're also coming back to the recurring theme as well on creating communities in whole buildings and this kind of curated approach. Sometimes in a building there can be hundreds of students. And should we be looking at sort of more support and tools for smaller flat groups or per floor or per interest, rather than trying to be something to everybody and potentially missing the mark completely?
So another key question that we wanted to ask to understand how we can build better communities is whether you want to prefer to live with people placed on the same course as you. And what we found is that actually only 33% of our participants want to be placed with people studying their course. So it's not always about that learning environment where that community comes from. And I think that's my own experience at university. I didn't really, most of my friends were people not on my course. It was those that I lived with. So 49% are open to be placed with students from a variety of courses. What our focus group told us, that it's our first group of housemates that has a real impact on experience, and have an element of choice or control over that is important. Course type is really the tip of the iceberg when matching tenants is concerned. How can we manage more students in this process, which for first years will always mean living with new people, but how can we give comfort that the new community will be the right one for them? There should be a way of identifying their purpose and beliefs, something that grounds them all together. Back to our earlier point on technology, and how that can be used to better allocate rent.
So this is a recurring question that we've asked several times in our research with different cohorts, and quite consistently it's 3 and 4 beds really that students want to be in. Only 10% indicated that they want to live on their own versus 69% would like to live with 2 to 4 people, and only 4% want to live with 6 to 8 people. If you're in a market that has a predominance of cluster beds, just take a moment to reflect on that stat, because it's quite likely that in your market most of the product is 6 to 8 beds rather than 2 to 4 beds. This stat also contradicts the myth that international students want to live in studios, as only 10% said that they do. We believe that they just do that by default, as it's often all that is left at the end of the season, so the metrics are skewed. What we don't know is whether living in a studio in purpose-built accommodation means that they consider that they're living with people, e.g. their neighbours on their floor or in their building, or do they truly see this as living alone? It feels like 4 beds, four friends is a typical friendship group. And when you consider living with 8 people, it can become unmanageable and feel less like a community. Students choosing their own flat or house outside of PBSA or university accommodation will typically choose a 4 or 5 bed house. This feels much more natural than a larger flat group.
And coming towards the end, this slide is relating to not our community research we did as part of our youth forum, but a bigger piece of research into what students want from accommodation that we did last year. But we presented students with 4 different layouts, and this was the layout that consistently became the most popular in both a UK focus survey and one where we surveyed international students studying across the globe. This layout takes away desks in bedrooms and brings them together in a co-working space. This signifies that preference again in being in smaller groups and taking desks out of bedrooms to help with mental well-being and pressure of not being able to switch off from studying. Whilst, of course, we know that PBSA has some amazing communal study areas, this is often on the ground floor in really big, vast areas and can be intimidating for people to walk into, and also the inconvenience of having to go all the way downstairs to study when you might want to do that within your flat, within your smaller community. Sitting in a study space staring at a laptop with headphones shouldn't be mistaken for part of the community facilities. What we do know through our research is that the kitchen is often seen as a place and source of conflict. Yet in most PBSA accommodations, it's the only place they have to connect and congregate with their flatmates. With this layout, there are more options to socialise, meet and study, which separates those different activities and we think could provide a more cohesive living environment. And whilst in our research the ensuite still reigns supreme, we are constantly challenging this, as if you're in a small group of 4 with people you know, like in a shared house, which many students do go and do, you're really unlikely to have an ensuite, or indeed at your home where you've come from. And as we can see from the question about sharing your room, people will make sacrifices for affordability. Equally, to our earlier point, the bathroom is also a place of conflict when sharing. We've recently worked with a designer at Heart on a study of different layouts, so we do urge you to go and check that out, because there was some really piece of interesting work around this.
The differentiation on how you interact with them. University, you don't have to necessarily know everyone, but you know you're all part of this student body. Then within accommodation, because you're seeing each other daily, you might be cooking together, you might be going to more social events.
You've chosen the course that you're on, or you're choosing like the societies you interact with. So that's sort of like a chosen community, whereas the people you live with, sort of an unchosen community.
Being in accommodation with people or being on the same course as people, even if you are interacting with them, doesn't guarantee that it is a community.
Living in a catered hall is good in theory, but in reality, you need to learn how to cook. It's like an essential life skill. It can bring you together with the other people.
Catered halls would help community, but I think the self-catered ones create a special bond between the people who share the hall.
A good part of living in halls is just hanging out in the kitchen and like running into them when you're like cooking. And if you lose that, I think you would lose a part of
coming together for meals in catered accommodation would help build community, just because it forces people to interact with other people over a set time while you eat. In my accommodation, they did put on events, but they were often not very well thought through. A film night on Friday night, but the majority of us are wanting to go out on a Friday night. I think it depends on the type of event that the accommodation organises to sort of create more of a sense of community.
If your accommodation has a WhatsApp group chat and you message, does anyone fancy go to the pub tonight? 3 or 4 people will probably say yes, and you might end up building a community through that. And if that could be encouraged somehow by the accommodation, that would probably help.
We didn't have any events to meet each other. There was no community. So I think maybe events like in the day could create community.
I chose to come to Manchester for university, with one of the main reasons being Manchester's gay village. And I feel such a massive part of the LGBT community here because there is such a strong sense of belonging.
I think a big part of it is where you come from originally, and the most friendly people all come from really rural areas. In Derby, I found it a very cultural and very interesting new place, and that made me more likely to interact with it and want to be part of the community.
I chose smaller uni because it makes me feel like I can actually get to know the people I study with, and it makes me feel a better part of the community. I prefer smaller community because of what I'm used to, and it feels more personal to me.
I think no one really interacts with anything local because at the university everything's small, everything's close-knit, everything's personal. And then you step out into a big city and it doesn't have the same community feeling as it does at the university. I think for the first half of the year, I'd be so excited. I would think money saving and, it could be really fun. I think you go a certain point where you just need your privacy, you need some alone time, and your room kind of has to be your private alone time.
I would definitely not want to share a room with a stranger. Being lonely, there's always ways to go out and meet people, but if you don't have your own room, it's very difficult to have any kind of privacy.
I'm in a shared room right now. I picked it because of cost reasons. I'm an international student. I would rather be on campus and have a shared room. I'm willing to sacrifice a bit of my privacy to be able to actually participate in university life.
Thank you to our students from our youth forum there for sharing their views on community. We have a YouTube channel with many videos from sound bites that we've done in focus groups with students. So we do urge you to check that out to hear directly from them what is important to them. Now on to our conclusion. So To conclude, understanding who is living in your building and where the next cohort of students is coming from is key. The term students or residents shouldn't really be used, in our opinion, as it's as useful as saying people. Where they're coming from, how old they are, what they're studying, how long is their course. This should impact how you support the community and how you make it bespoke to the people who are living in it. Number 2, collaboration. If you have knowledge about the student cohort, then share it. Universities, you should be telling PBSA developers what you need them to build to help support your growing numbers. And agents, tell the PBSA the feedback from your customers. And developers, investors and operators, you need to listen to the feedback and ask students as well. Other organisations such as HESA, UCAS and SHURE have data based on what is actually happening. This isn't about now, this is about what to develop in the next 5 to 10 years. We spoke a bit today about events and how that can help with community building, but we quite often see it being used as a competitive sport in the industry. It shouldn't be about the biggest and the best. It might actually be about making a difference to a handful of students in your building, the ones that will find their tribe at the events that you put on, which is much more likely in smaller groups with sort of self-development events rather than big parties or casual pop down to reception and grab a pizza. Number 4, PBSA operators shouldn't feel that they have to be everything to their residents. The wider community can help to facilitate events and activities. And a lot of students will pick the city that they're moving to because of what that city offers. Gyms can be outside the building, for example, and sports within the community can be encouraged, and faith groups, cultural groups and hobbies can be communicated via technology rather than be organised solely by yourselves.
Number 5, communication is a big one whenever we are doing focus groups and speaking to students. Communication is a big thing for them, and technology can be used far greater to kind of aid that better communication. To the point of one of our youth forum participants, chat rooms within buildings leaves more choice and ownerships of building that community for students. Or also, as we spoke about, the facilitation of matchmaking for residents. It's all out there, but it does need some money, investment and resource. We're product marketers, we're always talking about product and how it can better evolve and be better. So let's look at flat size, the choice of who they live with, take away those inflammatory layouts and situations. We need the product to evolve more really to start to serve residents on a community level. Being together in a building doesn't make a community. Social spaces have been focused on so much about a gym and study base and cinema room that don't really tick the community building boxes. It can more be done on floors and in flats around this. We talk about community and togetherness as different metrics. Community is becoming a buzzword, and as you've seen, it's actually not meeting the needs of the majority of the students. If we start thinking about what community should mean, we think what everyone has been promoting for far too long is actually just being together in a building. That is clearly not a community. And of course, our favourite question, our favourite thing is ask the question, speak to students, speak to customers, understand what they want. Research does cost money and it does take time, but it'll give you a lot of valuable data. Whilst we see a lot of good stuff being done by operators asking their own residents about customer service, isn't it more interesting to ask the ones that don't live with you and the ones that didn't choose your product and how you can bring them back to you? Of course, if you can't ask a question, we can do that for you. So do you know your customer is thinking? As I said, we do. We run regular youth forums, so the data that we're just presenting today is from our youth forum. We do these pulse surveys regularly and share them free to the sector. This is for this community research, which we will be releasing soon, so please follow that QR code to sign up to release that. And we also do bespoke research, so if you're interested in finding an answer to a question, then do reach out to us.
You can connect with us in all these different channels. We love talking on this topic. So if there's anything that you want to discuss or anything that's raised more questions, then please do get in contact with us. And we do have to thank our partners in our youth forum, Dig-In and the Crowd Agency, and of course PBSA News for supporting us as well. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring this kind of research to the industry for free. So please do take advantage of it. Thank you very much, and we look forward to discussing this further.
Thank you.